I don't know why, but sometimes the first block is the hardest block to place. But let's go ahead and get straight into this time lapse of a pirate themed build. I really don't know what else to call it because that's really all it is. All I know is that I wanted to build something pirate themed, so here we are. And of course, the first thing you need for any pirate themed build is a pirate ship. So we are building that right now. I would say this is my first real attempt at building a ship. Not that I haven't built them before, but at least I was trying to be somewhat accurate in this model. I think I did have to restart it a couple times, but in all honesty, I can feel for anyone who does large structures because I get so bored building these things. I don't know how people who build boats, how you do it. I don't have the patience. I mean, I did it here for the sake of this time lapse, but other than that, nope. I didn't really help myself out that much by making it extremely large from the start, but what can I say? I'm a mega builder. At least we have tools like Loft to help with the hull of the ship as well as making sails with a single command. Okay, well you still need to have some experience knowing how to shape things. Just having a command available to you isn't going to mean you're automatically going to be able to use it. It does still take practice, but it is a big time saver once you figure it out. Speaking of which, I do have a tutorial for that tool, which I'm sure most people know about, but in case you don't, there's a link to it somewhere. There is a good and a bad thing when building things at this scale. The good thing is you realize you have much more space for detail. The bad thing is you realize you have a lot of space to add detail, which means you have to come up with the details to add. And for me, I was using lots of reference photos, but it was harder to pick and choose what exactly I needed from those photos and apply them to my fantasy ship because it wasn't 100% accurate, and I know that. I purposely made it maybe a little bit more whimsical and unrealistic, but that's okay because this is a whimsical and unrealistic build, so it fits perfectly. This ship probably took about half of the total build time, even though it's not most of the build. I guess it's just the most detailed part of the build. And that's just from me looking back at my replay files and judging when I started it and when I finished it. So this ship took me about a month of building, but that's not building every single day. I don't know about you guys, but I have to really be in the mood to build, and that may have something to do with why it took so long. And I'm sorry I'm not getting these videos out as often as I would like to, but my builds just keep taking me longer and longer. It's not intentional, but that's just how it's happening. You'd think with more experience I would be getting faster, but no, they take longer and longer because I get too ambitious. We'll just say that. Also, I tend to do a lot more and more by hand, so I'm not really helping myself out that much. Anyway, back to this ship. It's still being built, isn't it? Oh yay, we get to take a small break and build a tiny organic in the front. The only thing is I couldn't decide what color I wanted it. At first I thought I wanted it to be super subtle and really dark, but towards the end of the build I wanted it to be a little more visible, so I did change it, and you will see that later on. Even so, I did add lots of little details to the ship, or I tried to. Just wherever I could add any interesting organic shapes, I would do it. I even did a little bit of interior with the captain's cabin. Even if it was a little disproportionate to the ship, at least I put the effort in to add it. There is that. This ship is starting to look ship-shape, and I just have a few final touches by coloring the sails and any other few tweaks I find. Oh, but then I realize I have to rotate this whole thing to make it a little more dynamic, and doing that causes many issues that take hours upon hours to smooth and fix. But again, for the sake of this time lapse, it must be done. While you watch me build a blob of water with the loft tool, let me just go ahead and explain the composition that I was thinking for this build. I actually ended up changing it halfway. As I was building the ship, it gave me lots of time to think about composition and how I wanted this build to go. So it was originally going to be a completely different composition, and I ended up switching it, made it a little more compact and more vertical. The original composition was going to be much wider space where the ship was going to be sailing off of a map as opposed to coming up out of a map. But that changed halfway and I just kept tweaking my ideas, and long story short, it just ended up as something completely different than what I originally intended it to be. But it still turned out okay, I think. And as you can see here, I am building my kraken, and I was just building the head off to the side so that I could get the proportions right, rotate it and get it in position, and then I could add the tentacles more fitted into the scene after that. It's my first time building a creature like this, and I think he's not too bad, my first go, although he is not anatomically correct. I know, I was just kind of basing him off of some art I found and then just kind of making him look however I wanted to. And already, just by adding him to the scene, it makes this whole build just come alive a little bit more, kind of brings it all together. Of course, we're not quite there yet, we still have a lot to go, but at least I can see it coming together. Up to this point, I wasn't going to do a map for the base, and then I suddenly decided I wanted to, so I made this little model to help me mock it up so I could see how it might look. Sometimes I draw, sometimes I make mini models. However you want to mock it up, it can be helpful. If I had decided to do the map earlier, I probably would have built it before doing the water, but we're kind of getting out of order now because I keep changing my mind. So I did that next, and I decided to copy what I currently had built and turned it into glass just to help me visualize how it would fit with this map and so I could get the correct sizing on it. Again, I built it out of order, but it's easy to adjust as you need to. I even painted my own little map in Photoshop and then used an image brush to paste it on. However, I did do a lot of tweaking with it after I pasted it in just to thin out the lines, change some colors, so it wasn't perfect, but it was a good guide to get me started. Now I feel like I'm in the final stretch of the build because I just have to add some underwater life and whatever other piratey things I can think of, just to make it look a little more lively and a little more piratey. Really? Is that all I'm trying to do? I suppose it is. One super rushed organic mermaid who I didn't dare show the face of because it looked too weird. Check. One treasure chest that I ended up rotating to make it look like it was half buried in the sand, although missing the mark on the X by just a few blocks because the wall of water was in the way. Check. Then I just started adding random objects, whatever I could think of, anything that seemed piratey and would just make the scene more interesting. Of course, I didn't want to cover the entire ocean floor because I still wanted you to be able to see the map through it. At any rate, this is probably my first real underwater scene. I'm trying to think of one I've done before, but I can't really, so we'll call this a first, and you all can let me know how I did. And one more thing I needed to add after all of this is just touching up the waves. I did kind of leave them a little bit bland, so I did need to touch those up a bit, and I think this is pretty good to go. I hope you enjoyed that time lapse, and I will follow it up with some obligatory cinematics with some epic swashbuckling music, and I hope to see you again sometime.